Ask you to join in saluting our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Wojcicki.
Here.
Mr. Meehan.
Here.
Ms. DeVenazia. Absent.
She's trying to remote in. Is she?
She's up, she's there.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful.
to speak probably.
Okay.
Are we doing that, Jim?
This meeting, yours.
Mr. Hedrick,
Here.
Mr. Murray,
Here.
Mr. Balin,
Here.
Ms. Minson,
Here.
Mr. Weissman is absent, Mr. Lynch,
Here.
Mr. Semrau is absent, Mr. Pasternak,
Here.
Mr. Henry,
Here,
and Ms. Bonzwich is here.
Notice this meeting has been provided through resolution adopted by the mayor and council on December 16, 2024, at its regular meeting of the mayor and town council at the Boonton Town Hall, 100 Washington Street, Boonton, New Jersey, and by electronic mailing to the citizens of Morris County and the Daily Record newspapers, through posting on the town website and by filing a copy of same with the town clerk. Members of the public were also permitted to submit written comments prior to meeting via mail or email, which will be read during the public comment period. All public comments, whether during the public portion of the meeting or submitted beforehand, shall be limited to no greater than 3 minutes in duration. We'll start our meeting off with a presentation from Web Management Services, Mr. Duncan Webb. Okay, we put the young guy over there for a reason.
Testing.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. It's great to finally see you all in person. I've met a number of you over Zoom in the preceding months, so it's great to see you here at a council meeting. I'm here tonight to share with you sort of the halfway point of a study that we've been contracted to complete on behalf of your community relating to the future of the Darris Theater. I'm going to go through a few slides tonight. These are highlights of a much longer and more comprehensive presentation that outline the work that we've done to date in order to reach some conclusions and make preliminary recommendations on how you might move forward thinking about the future of the theater. Next slide.
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
I think the first slide is, first slide is me introducing myself, so I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
So I am a management consultant to people who build, renovate, and operate theaters. It's a strange and obscure way to make a living, but I've been doing this now for 35 years, roaming around the country, working for cities, schools, developers, arts organizations, helping them think about building, fixing, and running these funny buildings. We are based in New York City. I have a staff of 4 and other sort of researchers contracted. This practice is 28 years old and we just started project 532. So lots of short assignments where we say our job is to come into a community, figure things out, speak truth to power, and then get out of the way. So it's a terrible business model, but our clients appreciate the fact that we are objective and professional. We're not hanging around to do anything else. You hire us to give you the straight truth on the issue at hand, which is what we always attempt to do. Next slide, please. So,
Sorry, Duncan.
okay. Here we are. So you bought a theater. God bless you for doing that. It seemed, I gather there was an opportunity that arose and the council sort of jumped in and did it. You hired a good firm of architects and specialist consultants to help you sort out how you would actually renovate it and what it would cost to do that. I know Miles and Schnoring and Stages are good firms, and I think you should feel sort of good about the work that they've done for you. But the reality is that $20 million is a lot of money to spend on any building in any community, no matter how large. it's a sad truth of our world today that construction cost escalation, particularly since COVID, has been so dramatic. So many communities are struggling with this same question of how can we justify spending that much money on this one building? So rightfully, you have sort of paused that decision on if and how to move forward, saying we need to learn a little bit more about how and why this might be a good investment for our community. So on that basis, you issued an RFP to do a study. We responded and were selected to do this work on your behalf. Next slide. So as I said, we're sort of halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way through this process. And so far, we've done a pretty good, comprehensive, inclusive effort with lots of confidential Zoom interviews with members of council, arts organizations, educators, Main Street business people, and other stakeholders in your community. We bought market data on Boonton and the surrounding market area to understand who lives, works, and visits here. We tried to understand who are the local arts organizations and presenting groups and educators and what they're doing. We brought some of our recent research on the broader forces and trends in the live arts and entertainment sector. We built a very comprehensive inventory of all the other venues within the market area related to live arts, film, education. And then we identified projects that might be comparable to what is possible here in order to give you some sense of those other possibilities. Next slide, please. So before I get to Boonton issues, just some of the broader forces and trends in the sector. It's sort of a bad news, good news thing. So the bad news in our sector is that there's declining participation in more traditional performing arts disciplines like dramatic theater and opera and ballet and classical music. There are significant fundraising challenges, both from the private and public sector, and nonprofit arts organizations themselves are in a pretty fragile state. On the good side, several important things are happening. One is the explosive growth of arts education and arts in education, how the nonprofit arts sector has sort of jumped in, given the gap in many schools, and is really driving arts education forward. A very important shift away from passive arts participation to active, meaning passive, I'm sitting in the audience, active, I'm up on stage singing in a choir or being a part of a theater. So shift from passive to active. Important shift in funding. It used to be that municipalities would fund the arts directly. Now municipalities fund the arts indirectly, meaning the money that comes to the arts isn't through an arts budget per se, but it comes through the arts through an economic development budget, or a transportation budget, or an education budget, or a juvenile justice budget, where the arts can make a case that they can help communities move forward in these different areas by investing in those places. Right, so that's the good news then, that we really are, though we used to live in a world where we would say the arts are wonderful, let's all support the arts. We now live in a world where we say, let's think about what your community needs and if and how the arts can help you get there. Next slide. So we looked at the market. We looked at Boonton in particular, but then sort of analyzed the area that's contained within a 30-minute drive time of the Dares Theater. So that covers a number of communities heading out in all directions. Within that market, we see a pretty strong propensity to participate in live arts and education and entertainment. Education is the most important predictor of art participation, more so than income, more so than age and race. It tends to be about how far people go in school that determines how likely they are to participate in various types of programs. So you have that highly educated market around here, and that suggests to us at least sort of pretty strong participation. We also bought some data from Esri on what's called Tapestry, this sort of geodemographic modeling system that breaks the world down into these clusters that describe people, not just in terms of demographic terms, but also lifestyle. And we look for those tapestry clusters in the drive time area that suggest to us that they are pretty high propensity neighborhoods and communities within this market. Next slide, please. So then we, as I said, we built this inventory of different kinds of facilities. We see gaps in the market, particularly as it relates to venues for live arts and entertainment, and also for arts education programs. Next slide, please. So this is another way to look at that inventory of facilities, and it's a bit confusing, but I'll try and explain. On the horizontal axis is the seating capacity. Every dot is a building, is a venue. The horizontal axis is seating capacity. The vertical axis is our judgment of quality, which goes between 0 and 4. And we use 8 different criteria to judge the quality of the venue. So whenever we do this, we build this matrix and then try to decide, are there gaps that can be filled by the Darris Theater within that? So, and you'll see there are lots of venues down in that sort of 100, 200, 300 seat range. When you get up over 400 to 500, there are fewer venues, but there are some competitive venues like South Orange, like the Victoria Theater at NJPAC, and like the Newton Theater. So there is some competition, but potentially some gaps. Next slide. Really, the key for us is trying to identify what are the potential uses and users of the Darris Theater if you were to get it renovated. And one of the critical issues for us was, what are the other venues in the market area that are presenting live music and comedy, more commercially oriented entertainment? And I think we see that, particularly looking to the north and a little bit to the northwest, there does seem to be sort of a gap in the regional market and venues doing that work. Next slide, please. Similarly, there are some film venues, nothing very close to here, but there are the big multiplexes. The film business is in a state of turmoil coming out of COVID. They still haven't recovered yet. And I'm not sure that they ever will, really. But independent cinema and historic venues doing independent cinema in kind of one-screen formats, there are some precedents for them, and there's really nothing like that around here. Next slide, please. And then the other thing we were looking for is all of the competitive arts education programs in and around the area. And that really, to me, is probably or potentially the strongest aspect of demand here. This seems to be a community where people really care about creating opportunities for their kids to learn, whether it's sports or recreation or arts. You have a walkable school district that's very interested in having school and after school weekend programs and camps. And there does seem to be an opportunity to provide sort of training and internships around technical theater for kids who are in schools in the area. Next slide. Whenever we look at these buildings and their potential use, we're always searching for opportunities for meetings, events, and community gatherings. Here again, there's a big inventory of meeting and event spaces within the drive time, but most of them are sort of hotel ballrooms. There really aren't that many places with larger capacity, good quality, and the kind of atmosphere and character that you might see in a renovated theater. Next slide. So we conclude there is a potential audience for events at the Darris Theater, given the nature of the drive time population. We do see a regional opportunity for really two things, two programmatic opportunities. One is about live commercially oriented entertainment, and the second is about opportunities for arts education. 3, there are gaps in the local and regional inventory of spaces for live presenting, education, and maybe a little bit for film. And 4, we can imagine that arts and entertainment facilities can be beneficial to downtown Boonton and the businesses that you're trying to recruit and support in your community. Next slide. So what I'm recommending is essentially that we explore 2 opportunities in that building. One is about commercial entertainment, mostly music, probably comedy. And the second is, let's explore the opportunities to have arts education programs based in that building. In addition to those two core elements of programming, we see two other opportunities. One is sort of the meeting and event business as sort of a building that has some atmosphere and character, and then the idea of potentially some film. So live arts and entertainment, live commercial entertainment is one, arts education is two. Those are the big two opportunities. But then the two secondary ones are meeting and events and then film. Next slide. So unlike other communities where we might say, okay, we've identified this opportunity, go for it, we will write you the business plan and you off and running. Here, instead, we are taking a slightly different approach, which is to say, we don't think that you should spend any money to renovate that building until you have identified an operator with whom to move forward. And the rest of our work is going to design a process by which you can go and look for that operating partner. And we really see three kinds of potential partners. One is a commercial operator, a company that is a for-profit business that would come and run an enterprise like that. So my comparable there is that we did the work that led to the renovation of White Eagle Hall in Jersey City a few years ago. And that was initially operated by the developer himself. He ran it, but then he said, I don't want to run this building anymore. I'm a developer, not a rock and roll guy. So we helped him run a process to find an outside operator. And he recruited the company that runs the Prudential Center. I always forget what they're called, but the New Jersey Devils guy, that company came in through a competitive bid process and now runs White Eagle Hall on behalf of that operator. The second opportunity is to find one of these educational programmers. And we've looked at precedents around the country where a nonprofit arts education organization has been recruited into a building as a tenant and an operator. And then the third option, which is sort of combines the first two, but seems to be a good one, is let's see, maybe there's an existing regional performing arts center we might come to run the Darris Theater as a satellite facility. And that's really thinking about the Mayo Performing Arts Center or NJPAC or Count Basie or a couple of the other venues in New Jersey that might think of this as a satellite. There are precedents for those kinds of arrangements around the country. We work with a building in Broward County, Florida that operates 4 other venues in Broward County in addition to the main Performing Arts Center. I've done a bunch of work over the years at Proctor's Theater in Schenectady. They now run 4 other venues in and around the capital region as satellite facilities for Proctor's. So that opportunity exists as well. So unlike other venues and projects where we'd say, go for it, spend the money, renovate the building, here we're saying, don't spend any money until we do more work to determine if you can find an operating partner who essentially would take all of the operating risk from you so that your only financial obligation would be the capital required to get the theater renovated. And you hopefully can work out a deal with them where they assume all or at least most of the operating risk of the venue. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide. And just to say, so we've made good progress. I was really pleased that these sort of opportunities kind of bubbled up. As I've already said, this is a bit unique. I don't think I've ever quite made this set of recommendations before, but it seems to make sense here. It's a great building, but there aren't a lot of local arts organizations who are ready to move in there. You're not in a position where you want to take on a great deal of operating risk. And there are good precedents in and around New Jersey to find operating partners to help you move forward with this project. So the work that we're going to do over the next couple of months is really just to put you in a position to go out and find that operator. So coincidentally, I'm working with the Mayo Performing Arts Center right now. I'm helping them write their new strategic plan. But I don't want to be the person that pitches this opportunity to them. It should be you all. So what I'm hoping to do over this 2 months is to give you the information and the tools and all of the prospective operating partners that we can find in and around the state of New Jersey so that you can go out and really test the market to see if you can find that operator before you put your community's resources in play to renovate the theater. So we will then, a couple months from now, we'll come back and say, here are kind of our long lists of potential partners, and here are the steps we think you need to go through to recruit one of those partners. And we will support you to the best that we can in heading down that road. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions for Mr. Webb on his work to date?
I just.
Microphone, please, Si. Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Okay. Looks like there are two sections that you're recommending. One is the building itself, to refurbish the building and make it available to whoever's gonna come in and do whatever they're gonna do, right? Or,
Well, no, I wouldn't renovate the building and just, I wouldn't renovate the building and just make it available. What we're saying is find an operator first. Find somebody who can guarantee a level of activity in the building and take the operating risk away from you as the community.
okay, but that person would have to renovate, have to have a renovated building.
Right, so what you do hopefully, and I'm speculating now, but I think the process would be to get to kind of an MOU stage with a potential operator, to identify these groups and have discussions with them and get to an MOU. I don't think you can really go beyond that at this stage, where they say, all right, here's what we're interested in, here's what you're interested in, here are our expectations, here's how we'll participate in the renovation, here's how we will operate the building, and here's how it will serve the interests of your community.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question. I thought the slide that you had about the capacity of the theater and then its quality and kind of where they fit on the grid was really interesting. And I was just curious what makes a quality theater? I mean, how does it kind of reach that I guess 4.0? Yeah, that
Right.
top grid, like what's Lightner Hall, what does Lightner Hall have that we have or don't have?
Right.
And how would you, what would your prediction, I guess, be in terms of the sort of quality experience that somebody might have at Darris?
So there, as I said, there are about 8 different criteria we use. Functionality, meaning can it do theatrical things? Does it have equipment and all the technology that you need for live performance? Good acoustics, meaning people on stage and in the audience can hear well. Atmosphere, amenities for audiences, amenities for users, staff and support. So we kind of rank all of those things.
Got it.
So I think with the design team that you have,
Mhm.
I think, what you're headed for is the Darris Theater somewhere between 3.5 and 4. That
Okay.
would be the reason to go ahead, is to get something at that quality level.
Got it. Thank you. Oh, sorry. did you-
No, go ahead.
Just in terms of the conversation with the potential operator, is that a conversation that would your organization be sort of brokering that conversation with us? And just how does that work in
Yeah.
terms
So
of?
I've been struggling with this question of how involved I should be, because really my job is to write a study.
Sure.
But I want to help you identify these partners and I want to open the door when I can.
Mhm.
But I don't think I should be barreling in there representing you. So I've sort of have to carefully determine how far I can go in identifying partners, but then essentially set you up
Right.
for these conversations.
It would be more of an introduction than a brokering.
Exactly. Thank you, sir.
And so we would have to identify,
He can help us identify. He knows the players. We
no,
don't.
but we'd have to identify within the town, right? Who has that conversation? Is that you?
I imagine he represents the council.
Thank
Did you have something, John?
Duncan, thank you. Couple questions. One of the slides, the conclusion slide has the street lamp on it. arts and entertainment facilities are critical for downtown Boonton as and if parking is addressed.
Right.
What, if we cannot do anything significant as far as parking, are we dead in the water? Is that what you're saying there?
Right, so parking is always a difficult challenge on projects like this, and it is often the perception of parking problems as much as the reality of parking problems, right? If you know, it was just interesting in many of our interviews, the first thing that people wanted to talk about was parking. And so I think that it has to be addressed in a way that it's not the first thing that people want to talk about. Because if it is, then you're just not going to get very far. So some effort has to be made either with plans or with the communication of plans that can get people believing that one way or another, there is a solution.
Does the Mayo now or Wellmont or Newton, do they have satellite facilities now? Like you mentioned, Darris could be for Mayo or NJPAC?
They do not have satellite facilities. I've been broaching it sort of carefully with Mayo, getting them to think about it. But they don't. And, you know, what's most interesting for Mayo is that their education programs are just exploding still. And they are about to break ground on an expansion of their building, which will essentially add new education facilities there. So they've already said to me, don't talk to me about Boonton until we get the shovel in the ground on our current expansion, which is sometime this year. But I still think in the longer term, the way their education programs continue to grow and expand, that a pitch is possible with them.
Does the arts education sounds wonderful, but does it actually generate money?
Right. So what it does is it generates, in the nonprofit sector, we make money in two ways. We have earned revenue, which is ticket sales and rental income and food and beverage. And then we have contributed income, which is grants and donations, and special events and things. Arts education is really working these days because it can drive both. Because parents will pay fees for their kids to participate in programs. But then seeing happy children on a stage is pretty much the most compelling theme or image you can have for fundraising purposes. So that's why education, largely why education is exploding the way it is, because it is so compelling from not just a mission perspective, but from a financial perspective.
Seeing that Mayo is about to break ground to upgrade their education facilities, does that not bode too well for us?
Yes, it means that they've already said, we're not a short-term solution for Boonton. Don't let us, we've got to get our expansion done. But I still don't think that, you know, you don't really, there's a little bit of urgency around this, but I think that the possibility of lining up a partner who might be available, you know, 2 to 3 years out, which is quite realistic given the time it's going to take to raise the money and go through all that work, it really isn't that far away.
And these arts educations, are these run by organizations that are typically outside of the school system, like independent acting classes, things of that
Yeah,
nature?
they're generally 501c3 independent nonprofit organizations.
Do they compete against the schools? I mean, we have, you know, the schools typically have stages where they run their own spring musicals. The Morris County school system has the academies that specialize in arts and entertainment. So I'm curious about how that would interact with what the theater would offer.
Right, these nonprofit groups essentially figure out what the schools, what the schools is able to do stops and pick up there. So if, you know, if your schools have some great sort of academy programs, but so a nonprofit education partner needs to sort out where they can then pick up from those programs, essentially creating connections and opportunities for kids beyond what they're able to get in the school district.
Do you feel the area around here, again, this 30-mile radius, which has the Wellmont, Mayo, Newton, South Orange, is there enough business to support another theater, small theater? Do you feel?
But in what way? Audiences?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank
That's
you.
part of what we hope to find from the operator, because the operator is going to be assuming the
Right,
risk.
because, right, it's one thing for me to say in the abstract, sure, there are audiences out there. But if an operator comes in here and says, yes, we like this location, we believe that in this location, we can attract an audience, then that's something you can hang your hat on.
And if they put skin in the game.
I just have one more question. In the 500 plus presentations you've done or the agreements that you've worked with, by and large, do you always come out saying that it's always a good idea, or do you actually say, you know what, guys, this is just not going to be a good idea for you?
So I count this very carefully. 20% of the time, we come back and say, the idea that you had before you hired us is a good idea. 10% of the time, we come back and say, don't do anything, just walk away. 70% of the time, we come back with an answer that is different than the answer or the idea that had been bubbling around the community before we got there. And I think this is a classic case of that. We're not just coming back and saying, sure, good idea, go ahead. We're coming back and saying, you know, this is tricky because there aren't, in many communities, we often see lots of nonprofit arts organizations who are just dying to have a place to come and do their work. We don't see that. What we do see are really the two main opportunities of education and live entertainment. But again, because of the nature of this project in your community, we would not encourage you to go ahead and do the project until you had enough of a kind of an arrangement with the potential operator that would make it worthwhile doing.
Thank you very much. I'm good.
Anyone else?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I was also going to ask about parking. Are there any benchmarks that you've looked at or would provide as part of your full study in terms of the size of the theater and the amount of parking they provide, or hopefully some that don't provide much parking?
Well, I'm not a parking person, but I hear that people in that world often say we need one parking space for every 2.5 seats in the theater. But that doesn't account for how far people have to walk to get to that. And the big problem with parking is often in fact, it isn't so much about how far people have to walk or how uphill or downhill it is. What is often the key driver is parking within a line of sight. That seems to be a big kind of mental thing with people, whether it's going to shopping malls or wherever. If you can provide enough parking within a line of sight to where they're going, then that seems to be a key criteria.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that, I mean, a number of my questions, and I think even going in when we first were looking for the RFP to look for advice was, expecting kind of certain concrete answers, studies, and it sounds like it's going to be more the operating partner would, so on parking, right? Ultimately, you can give me an abstract answer. We can think we have a confident assurance here that there's parking in the area, but if no one will partner with us without a garage.
There's your answer.
Yeah, okay. In the same vein, did you look at the architectural plans as part of, do you anticipate any adjustment to the scope based on an operating partner's desires or the market they're
They
looking?
might have slightly different requirements and they might look at those plans and ask for different things, but still it's pretty limited what you can do there. You're really landlocked within those walls. There's not that much flexibility there. So you get a better stage and a little bit of a backstage support. You get a better house and a little bit of room behind it. So if they can figure out a way to work within those 4 walls and within that renovation plan, they will.
So on that, a common question I've gotten from residents is, the theater was in operation, maybe it stunk and a number of other things, but up until the day we bought it, it was open. Why do we need $17 million to get it open again? One of the things I think we'd be looking for, but you may tell me it's the operating partner. But are there incremental, can can we invest less and still get an operator to come in and run the theater? Or you see it as, no, what we have in those plans
I
is the minimum?
highly doubt that, but again, if an operator says there's a partial renovation that I can work with, maybe. But I would be skeptical about that.
And then any other models that you've looked at or have ever recommended with regarding to operating? So that typically you would have this operating partner, but are there ever examples where it's successfully run, municipally, or that a town would buy a theater and help a developer obtain grants and then sell it?
Well, yeah, there are really 6 different ways buildings are run, including government, having developers, nonprofit operators, existing operators. I think I would discourage you and your town from being the operator. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't think you should necessarily hand it over or sell it to a developer. I think the best way to ensure that your interests are protected is to maintain ownership, but enter into some kind of a contractual relationship with an outside operator. Also, because if it doesn't work out, you can kick them out and find somebody else.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks very much.
No, thank you for coming, Councilman Ballin, address what I was going to ask on the parking and things, so appreciate it. Thank you.
I got some questions.
Okay. I guess I'll go last. I'm sorry, Jake.
You're good, Maria. Just because a lot of these questions kind of felt very, is this possible? I want to look like, did you look at all at like in other areas where these projects have been done, like the impact this could have on our main street, on the businesses, on the life that we've been breathing back into our community, like things along those nature?
Yes, so whenever we do these studies, it's always 4 questions. Is there an audience? Are there uses? What's wrong with the facilities you've now got? And then 4, how can this project help you get where you're trying to go as a community? So I think we answered that 4th question pretty well. We referred to your comp plan and economic development studies and talked to the downtown merchants and really got a strong sense of how this project really drives the continuing development of that part of your community.
Okay. I guess then, so like projects like these tend to have a fairly positive impact on the businesses around as they drive more traffic and things like that as well?
Correct. So it's bringing the number of people into downtown. It's the biggest thing I find is that it's the impact when people see the lights on and people on the sidewalk, and the sort of how that changes people's perception of the downtown, how it will encourage other businesses to locate, how it will increase tax revenues coming to your community, and this idea of a district, right? We're a generation ago, we were building palaces of the arts. These big, fancy architects would build giant Lincoln Center and the Kennedy Center, wipe out a neighborhood and build a fancy new building. Nowadays, we're really interested in the idea of districts, meaning develop arts and entertainment pieces, and then connect them together. So the way that like Boonton Coffee is almost like could be a part of an arts district. There's live music there, and then there's other sort of bits along your main street that could be kind of unified, and you can brand it as a district. And districts are very powerful ways to attract visitors to your community. It's really hard to market a theater to tourists, but it's well often done and successfully done to attract visitors to a district. So a reason to come into the community, get out of their car, shop, eat, go to a show, have a drink, and so on. So this idea of being a part of a district and animating other parts of your main street with live arts and entertainment is very powerful.
So this is very easily like a Lego piece that fits into what we're already building. This isn't throwing something new in the mix.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I guess Marie's up next.
Thank you. Duncan, I'm sorry I'm on video. I would have loved to have been there in person, but it just was impossible for me today. I'm going to preface this by I was the chair of the Dares Theater Committee that was composed of citizens and council members, including Mr. Wakilski and former council member Wade. And I am pleased. Well, first of all, I read your book as part of my preparation to run the committee, and I learned a lot from it. So thank you for that. But I am pleased to see that your study has so far borne out the work of our committee. That the analysis of what types of entertainment would be the most feasible is right in line with what we had come up with. We had very quickly never considered really having the town operate the theater. It was always going to be an outside operator, someone with expertise in the area, someone with knowledge of market trends and what drives audiences. And I also appreciate your compliment on the architects that were ultimately chosen by this council. I think that they have served us well. There were two things though that I wanted to mention that you did not bring up. One of them, you did use the word tourism. I think that the unique nature of this theater lends itself to at least people coming to see it out of curiosity, because it is the only one of its type in the country. That there's some cross promotion that we can do with organizations like oh God, I'm blanking on it. The Historic Theater, Laura, you know it. I know it.
League of Historic American Theater.
Thank you. Out with LHAT. Thank you. You know that if when they do their New York meeting, when the King's Theater has its 100th anniversary, that if we can somehow cross promote the Dares as part of their bus tour, if we're anywhere near a spot that that it's presentable to the public, I think that's that people will come once just to see it. And then the idea was that they would come back again because they had such an incredible experience. Everyone always has concerns about parking, but we did also look at successful other regional theaters and local theaters that
Marie,
are.
do you have a question for Mr. Duncan? Mr. Webb?
Do I have a question? My question is, no, maybe I don't. Maybe I'm just making a speech. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Mr. Webb.
I probably did have a question, but
Sure.
it was probably just a long lead up to it.
Okay, if you've got a question, shoot.
I think that actually the question had to do with the part of the presentation that will come in the next portion of it, which had to do with who some potential partners for us would be. And I think that is a question that's going to have to wait for the second half of his presentation, actually.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you mind if we could include this in the minutes so the public can see it, even if they weren't able to make it?
I think it's presented here. It's automatically public.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
One last question. Do we have a time frame for the completion of the,
Couple months.
so is that April, June?
I think Laura was hoping I could be done end of March early year.
Perfect, thank you.
Moving on, we actually had a piece of correspondence that was supposed to be on the last agenda. I asked it to be held off and it didn't make this agenda. And so it's a last minute addition. It's from our Parks and Rec Director, Tracy Pryor. Boonton Parks and Recreation would like to ask permission to hold our 4th annual car, truck, and bike show on April 27th between the hours of 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. We're requesting permission to close Main Street between West Main and Highland Avenue intersections to William Street, as well as the Main Street and Boonton Avenue intersection to Birch Street between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. to set up and disassemble the event. In the event of inclement weather, the event will be on Sunday, May 4th, 2025 at the same location. A request to Morris County has already been made. May I open this up for discussion? Got a motion to open?
So
this up?
move, Balin.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody have any comments or questions?
Fantastic event. Can't
Good
wait.
idea, yeah.
Thank you.
I would close that and call for motion to grant approval.
So move.
Second, Balin.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on, we have our various reports, starting with Administrator Neil Henry.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, in addition to facilitating and attending meetings of the individual subcommittees and working on the various components of this evening's agenda, I've worked on the following since the last council meeting. Work continues on replacing our town engineer. The administrator is presently assessing the two options, hiring an in-house engineer or proceeding and going with an outside consultant. That work continues. Mr. Ezzy and I met with representatives of the county health department to discuss new regulations regarding our recycling facilities. These new regulations will prohibit commercial vehicles from dumping waste, including recyclable materials at our recycling facility. This is a result of Morris County and the state experiencing an increase in illegal dumping incidents involving dirty and illegal transportation of solid waste, including recyclables, resulting in environmental contamination and costly remediation. So work will continue on how we communicate that message to the public, because that's obviously going to be a big change in our policy. We did go up to the county and try to work our way out of that, but with no avail. Attended meetings of the Finance Committee while working towards finalizing our 2025 budget. Next up is a review of all capital requests, which will commence next week. I did coordinate a meeting with the police department, fire department, and the OEM to review a new shared service agreement with the county of Morris for the 9/11 dispatch center. I also worked with our OEM director to initiate a drill for town hall employees that would assist us in formulating a plan on how to conduct town hall business in the event of town hall closure due to a natural disaster, power failure, etc. And then finally, my work continues on managing a number of matters related to personnel and other litigation. That concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you. Any council member comments or questions for Administrator Henry?
Just a question on the commercial dumping. Are we still looking at the possibility of it becoming a county center?
I tried Zeke and that was shot down.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to DPW, Councilmember Balin.
Thank you. I was not in attendance at Monday's meeting due to conflict. However, thanks to notes from my colleagues, I can report that we discussed the additional work on the Rosser Street sewage improvement, new change order there. The town hall lift out front, which is a temporary repair, and will be in the budget for a new lift, correct that issue in our 2025 budget. Mr. Henry mentioned the no commercial material at the town dump moving forward. And then we also had a visit from Captain Patonic to discuss parking signage, and that will be moving forward.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Councilmember Balin? Seeing none, we'll move on to library. Councilmember Mincy.
We spent our first meeting of the year reviewing our last month. We had a great December. Big interest events were Tummy Timers and Dungeons and Dragons. So we continue to just do excellent work, particularly with the children's programming. Coming up around the corner, Winter Sewing is back by popular demand. That's on Saturday, February 8th. Fiber Arts, first and third Wednesday, and Chess. Those are all programs that we're going to be renewing. So we have people coming back. So there's a lot of positivity there. Also, there is the Valentine's Day haiku competition that is this Friday for anyone who would like to participate in that. We had 30,000 material pieces in circulation last year, so it's a really strong showing for the library. It's not quite at pre-COVID numbers, but getting really close. And our online materials, there's 30% of that is through online materials. So a lot of critical mass, a lot of people making use of our library. We welcomed our new board member, Deirdre Feeney, and just an update just on a number of the renovations. Our makerspace floor should be finished mid-February. That's my update for the library.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Councilmember Minson?
Which is the makerspace floor?
I think it's the basement floor.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Alexis, at the next meeting, could you raise a question of whether or not there's a possibility of putting handrails on the stairs down to the makerspace?
I will definitely do that. Handrails.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Boot Main Street. Councilmember Minson.
Notes for that. Again, we spent our first meeting of the year reviewing and really event planning for the year ahead. This first Friday coming up, February 7th, February 7th is Love Booton. So that's the theme for this first Friday. Why do you love Booton? There will be Post-it notes in participating businesses, giving you an opportunity to tell us what you love about Booton. So please participate in that. We have our farmers market that's continuing to really fill up in terms of vendors. We have 10 vendors at this moment. Our opening day is May 17th. So those plans are well underway. We are also going to be introducing first Saturdays at the farmers market. So that will highlight children's events, family-friendly events that will be part of the farmers market festivities. And just looking ahead, March, first Friday, the theme is International Women's Day. And we spent the majority of our meeting delegating tasks to our board members, organizing volunteers. We are still in need of volunteers. So if you're looking for a way to get involved in the town, this is a great opportunity. Our board members are responsible now for new business welcome, speaking with business owners, managing events, and collecting data, which is a big initiative for Boot Main Street. That's my report.
Any comments or questions for Councilmember Minson? Seeing none, we'll move on to, actually, we're going to combine Board of Health and Housing Authority. Councilmember DiVinizio.
Okay, so both of those meetings this time around were basically their reorganization meetings. I was lucky because of our council meeting was so short on Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, I was able to attend Board of Health. The one thing that did come up was the health officer did a recap of annual services, went over the budget for the shared service agreement for this coming year, and also talked a little bit about some upcoming legislation regarding vaping, but that's at the state level and is still kind of out in the future in a cloud. So as far as Housing Authority, again, reorg and some positive comments from Sherry Sims regarding the work that she's done with Mr. Henry on the sinkhole at the Plain Street at the Riverside Apartments and the progress that's being made regarding flooding up on Chestnut Street. Those are basically it. And I hope I can make the next Board of Health. But again, it's a Tuesday, so maybe not, depending on how long our meeting is. Thank you.
Any comments or questions for Councilmember DiVinizio? No, seeing none, we'll move on to parking. Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. At our last meeting, we discussed the advertising for a second class one parking enforcement officer still in progress. We hopefully will have a new officer working in about 2 months. As Councilmember Balin mentioned, the DPW and the police department are coordinating the installation of the signs for the new parking ordinances. A few are in, a few more need to be done. Laura Wagner is going to follow up with the firm that performed the vision study and a few towns similar to Booton for suggestions on parking. And finally, we received a request for a handicap spot by the library. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Councilmember Murray? Seeing none, we'll move on to Councilmember Murray, Planning
you.
Board.
Thank you, Mayor. At the reorg meeting, all the new and newly reclassified members were sworn in office. An application for one house renovation on Dixon Ave requiring 3 minor variances was approved. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
No comments. I just wanted to report on the fire department after.
Sure, go right ahead.
Oh, okay. This is just for January. There were 25 calls came in. 6 of them were from out of town. So we had 19 here in town. And fortunately, most of them were not fire related. In other words, smoke or somebody smelled so, but they were busy, so.
We hear the whistles. We're in good shape with them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to consent agenda, resolutions 25-63 through 25-67. Can I get a motion to open these up for discussion?
No moved, Wilkowski?
Second, Vincent.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody have any comments or questions on the consent agenda? Pretty short this week.
I just have one comment on the resolution 25-67. Just to say that our Historic Preservation Commission is established to provide expertise and matters related to historic preservation. And just thank the mayor for speaking their input as we move forward.
I will try to make an effort to do so.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
On 65, I've heard a lot of good things about our incoming assistant superintendent. Looking forward to working with him.
Yeah, pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
Seeing no others, I'd call for motion to move the consent agenda forward.
No moved, Wilkowski?
Second, Vincent.
Liz, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes.
Stevens? Yeah.
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Wilkie?
Yes.
Yes. Next up, unfinished business, we have ordinance 01-25. Public hearing, proposed adoption, and ordinance granting municipal consent for the operation of a cable television system within the town of Boonton, New Jersey to CSC TKR LLC doing business as Cablevision of Morris. An ordinance granting municipal consent for the operation of a cable television system within the town of Boonton, New Jersey to CSC TKR LLC doing business as Cablevision of Morris. Can I get a motion to open this up to the public?
No moved, Wilkowski?
Second, Balin.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any members of the public wish to discuss this particular ordinance, please step forward and introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Brian Vint, 217 Crown Road. Just one question with this ordinance. Are they? I'll do it afterwards. With this ordinance, is Cablevision, I know there's a lot of problems with outages, stoppages. Are they guaranteeing, or at least that service is going to improve on anything, giving us any better guarantees than what we have?
No. We're just giving them the right to operate. Any other public comment? Close the public comment. Open it up for council discussion. Anybody have comments or questions? Did I see correspondence today that you had to make modifications, and were they already done?
Mayor, you saw something that was probably last week. What happened was the minor de minimis revisions just incorporated the Altice recommendations that BPU OCTV made. We didn't hear back from them timely for the first reading, but we just updated the second reading with those minor changes. And it really has more to do with the Exhibit A, keeping the account numbers for the library and other places intact.
Okay. Seeing no council discussion or comments, getting a motion to move this forward.
So moved, Wilkowski?
Second, Murray.
Get a roll call, please.
Yes.
Stephen Azia?
Yes.
Mr. Petrick?
Yes.
Mr. Meehan?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Wilkie?
Yes.
Mayor Win?
Yes. Next up, we have council member comments. Any member of council care to make a comment on, bring up any topic? Councilmember Meehan?
Yes, the rec department's actually starting something new this year, a Valentine's for the first responders. Starting this tomorrow, there's gonna be a drop box at Town Hall. If you'd like to drop off a Valentine, thank your first responders in town. Something new that we're doing, just trying to bring a little bit more notification appreciation to our first responders. So it's being run by the rec department. So if you have any questions, reach out to Tracy. at Town Hall, but I think it's a great way to say thanks to everybody. You do a good job for us.
Thank you. Mr. Hettrick.
So I'm gonna announce the green team is having our second seminar. It's the how to, how not to, and the whys of recycling. It's gonna be hosted by Liz Lorenger of Bare Minimum, working with the MCMUA. It's going to be February 28th, I believe it's a Thursday at the library in the the 27th, a Thursday at the library in the Makerspace. Our last one was phenomenal. We had a packed house. We were bringing in seats from the other room to accommodate everyone. So please come out. It was a great time, very informative, and I'm sure this one will be fantastic too. For any more information, please see me after the meeting.
Thank you very much.
I just have a question. Where, and I apologize if I should know this already. Where's the best place to find out what Green Team is doing? Is there something on the town website or is it Facebook, Instagram? What's the best way?
I would actually like to talk to you about that, about setting up something on the town website or Neil, but also you can just email either myself or Melissa DeSalvo, and we have a Google Drive. We can send you out anything you need.
Any other comments? Questions? Okay.
Yeah, I did have a comment. Oh shoot, now I've forgotten it. It'll always, they always come back too late. My question for Mr. Webb had to do with how parking affects venues like White Eagle Hall, which is also located in the center of a city. But, too late for him to answer that. So maybe we can relay that question on to him. You know what? It'll come back to me and it'll still be good next time around, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you, Marie. I
Yeah,
understand
thank
Mr.
you. I'm
Meehan
sorry.
has another comment.
I got one more item I forgot to mention regarding the police committee, and this comments are mainly for my fellow council people. We've been talking about improving signage at some of the street intersections in town. Bob Ray brought up earlier about handicap spacing. In the next meeting, next 1 or 2 meetings, there's gonna be some ordinances coming out about that, so I'd appreciate everyone's support as to review them. I think they're good for the town. The police department's put a lot of effort into making sure that these intersections are signed the way they should be. So I just want to bring that up to your attention. So when things come out, if you have any questions, reach out to me, but I'm looking for everyone's support on that. Thank you.
I would open this up to the public. Any member of the public wish to make any comment, please step forward, introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Brian Vinton, 217 Crown Road. This is probably more for Mr. Henry. Can we get a clarification? I know that a lot of people go around, get the permits, Verizon, selling you roofing things about what time frame, especially with nighttime. People walk in the neighborhoods knocking out at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, get a knock on your door. Is there a time frame where the should and should not be doing it? If we can just get a clarification on that, post it, that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I do remember what it was I wanted to bring up in council comments, if that's okay, when the public is
Got 3
done.
minutes.
Go right ahead, Marie. Oh, wait a minute.
And when
Brian's
Mr. Vint,
offended.
when
Brian's
Mr.
looking for
Vint
you.
is finished. Are you done? I thought you were done, Brian. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Monday is trash day down in the flats, and what I'm noticing is that in the past we've had complaints about rodents and critters getting into garbage, and I don't know what our current ordinances are about requiring people to not just put a bag out on the street, but to actually put that bag in a container of some sort. But, maybe we could encourage people, especially with springtime coming, that, it's always a better practice to put your trash in a container that is perhaps a little bit more resistant to critters than just a black trash bag on the sidewalk.
Perhaps you could bring that up to the Board of Health.
I think I might. Thank you for the suggestion, Mayor.
That's actually Councilmember Balin, but you're welcome. All right, I would then ask our clerk if there's any No emails or mails? Then we call for a motion to adjourn.
Second, Balin.
All in favor?
Aye.